Ooh, let's get the things ready. Okay, so happy Easter, everyone, wherever you're watching. Obviously, a lot has happened in sports news. Some of it not very positive, unfortunately. We've obviously found out this morning that Sir Sterling Moss has passed away following a long period of ill health at the age of 90. And I've just done a video on his career and some of the highlights. Also, if you're an ice hockey fan, Colby Cave unfortunately passed away at some point yesterday following an operation on a brain cyst. He was aged 25, so if you're an Everton Oilers fan, sadly, he is also no longer with us. That's a bit of negative news. We also know that the PFA are still having ongoing talks with the FA and the football leagues, like Premier League and the EFL, about player wage deferrals or pay cuts. And as we now know, that still hasn't reached a conclusion. Individual clubs and individual playing groups have come to agreements outside of the discussions, such as Celtic and Southampton coming to an agreement where they're looking at about a 10% wage deferral. In other news, UEFA are planning, if they can get the fixtures done, to play the Champions League and possibly Europa League in a 3-week block in August. And that is all reliant on getting the last of the leagues started by the end of June. If the leagues haven't restarted by the end of June, that plan goes out the window. But that is the plan by UEFA, is to basically try and get all football in Europe restarted by the last day of June, and then play the remaining Champions League and Europa League knockout games, similar to like a Football World Cup, where you have winner takes all matches in a very short space of time in August. Other news as well: Jose Mourinho is coming under a bit of fire and pressure after taking a training session that breached lockdown rules with some Tottenham players. And it also looks like that when the transfer window does reopen, Harry Kane looks very likely to be on the way out, possibly for £200 million. I'm not sure how football fans are going to react to that, because I honestly believe that what we are seeing right now is a turning point in the finances of football, because you have to look at things and go, is that a justifiable amount of money? Now, we know Daniel Levy is quite the businessman, but at the same time, with the debate that's going on about player wages and club financial losses at this time, can the clubs justify doing that? On the Newcastle United takeover, there is no news. I don't think a takeover is going to happen at this time. It's dragged on with Mike Ashley now for over 3.5, nearly 4 years, with no resolution. Although with the current financial climate, Mike Ashley might have no choice but to be forced to sell for whatever price any bids could be put in at. So we'll see what happens with Newcastle. We know bids are currently in place. Whether they're successful or not, or Mike Ashley is happy with the amount of money he's been offered for the club, we shall see. Yes, so let's look back at the Tottenham situation. Jose Mourinho has come under a lot of pressure for allowing and taking a training session in breach of UK government guidelines on the lockdown and to combat the coronavirus. Been a bit of a crappy week and a bit for Tottenham. They've been heavily criticised for the way they've handled the furloughing of staff. Daniel Levy's come under a lot of pressure for the way he has handled the publicity behind the furloughing of staff, and publicly announcing his salary and his bonuses, and on the very same day they furloughed the staff. Harry Kane looks like he's had enough there, but can a £200 million transfer be justified? Firstly, no player is worth that amount of money, and secondly, as I say, we are at a crossroads with football finances. We have to come to a point where we have to ask the question: where has all the money gone in the sport? Because we're looking at the fact that they've signed these multi-million, not billion-pound TV deals with BT, Sky, and overseas providers, Amazon. Where's all the money gone? Yes, Sky have been reported in saying that they will not ask for £371 million back from the Premier League. But then that raises the question: if they're not going to ask for a rebate on that money for those games that are yet to be shown, where are they going to raise that income from? It looks most likely that Sky customers are going to be paying the brunt of it with increased subscription fees. And I don't think that's going to go down well with the customer base that's already not overly happy with the product they're paying for because of internet, mobile phone, TV. I know of many Sky customers who are friends of mine who are not very happy with the service that they get, what they pay. So it's looking likely that Sky may start passing that bill on to their customers at this current time. That would not go down well as a PR move. Really wouldn't. But we do know that Sky have kind of said, yeah, we're not going to ask for the remainder of our TV package money back, which relieves some of the pressure on the Premier League and the Championship, but not entirely, because BT have not come out, Amazon haven't come out, the overseas broadcasters haven't come out and said we're happy to not ask for a rebate on our TV deal. We don't want all our money back. I mean, BT could ask for 30 odd million that they could lose out of this back, and BT's having its own problem with its presenters over unpaid contracts. Presenters aren't happy with the standoff that's going on right now, because there's no matches to commentate on or debate about, and there's nothing really going on in the world of football, rugby, and other sports. Some of the hired staff are not technically BT Sport employees. They are doing so independently of other contracts they have with BBC or Sky or Premier Sports, and they're borrowed by BT Sport to present programs, and they're in discussions about demanding a payment for their contracts and compensation for their loss of earnings from BT Sports. So BT Sports under a lot of pressure, which may force BT to ask for some money back from the Premier League. The interesting thing to know is when I looked at the financial impact of COVID-19 or coronavirus on professional sport, the Premier League actually is one of the leagues most financially impacted, with projected losses. This is all dependent on when they can get seasons restarted and if they're behind closed doors, in front of fans, small stadiums, one location where they just play all the matches in one location, so they can sort of contain the players in a bubble to avoid them, testing positive, although we do know that players have tested positive anyway, and we know that players have already breached guideline regulations. Just hold on 1 second. My phone is buzzing, which means I have some notifications to do with the news. But no, in all seriousness, what we have seen in the last few weeks is how badly prepared sport has been for a possible shutdown. It could be for any reason. We've seen player strikes before. We've seen safety issues where stadiums haven't met safety standards. We've seen strikes in countries that have shut leagues down because there's industrial unrest. What we have never seen is a health issue this bad. Now, the only comparable health issue or similar situation is back in 2001 with the foot and mouth outbreak, which shut down Irish sport that autumn, affected the Six Nations, where the Irish games were played 6 months after the end of the Six Nations, which then affected how the tournament was played out between all the nations. It affected horse racing, dog racing. So if you watch the greyhounds, for example, so some sports were in fact impacted in 2001 on a multinational scale. Horse racing, especially, and rugby union were two of the majorly impacted sports of the foot and mouth outbreak of 2001. But the interesting thing is we've never really seen a global shutdown of sport. We've seen regional shutdowns of sport because of political unrest or safety issues, natural disasters like earthquakes and flooding. But we've never seen something on the scale of whole global leagues and global sporting events just being stopped. I mean, F1 has now lost 9 Grand Prix from the calendar this year. There are concerns that F1 may not financially survive, especially some of the smaller teams, and that would mean a different F1 grid and how, again, that sport is run. And we know that rule changes have been pushed back a year, car development's been affected. We know the Ferrari factory shut. We know some of the other F1 teams are making medical supplies for the British Health Service over here, such as Red Bull and Mercedes, because their factories are based over here. So they've switched from car development to making ventilating equipment because they have the technical nous to do that, and they have the engineers to do that. Formula E's been affected, but the bigger loss is more financial. We have seen leagues suspended for, as I say, a variety of reasons. And as I say, the closest comparable reason I can come up with, the closest example I can come up with of something affecting sport like this is the foot and mouth outbreak 20 years ago. But we are in uncharted territory in a sense, but it does show how vulnerable sport has become to a shutdown financially. And what we're seeing is each country's got its own different version of the lockdown and different policies in place. So there's not a universal shutdown policy in place across the globe. It varies from country to country, and the regulations vary from country to country. Um, Belarus, for example, they're still playing football, they're still playing ice hockey, whereas other countries around the world have gone, no, we're going to even shut down our sporting events even behind closed doors. Belarus, there is no lockdown in place. They are carrying on regardless. That is the only sport taking place is in Belarus. It is madness. They've been heavily criticised as a country for going down this path, but the death rate in Belarus and the reports of coronavirus in Belarus are very, very low. So that does also raise questions about various vaccination programs to do with other lung-based issues such as tuberculosis around the world. But it is highly interesting that, yeah, Belarus is going on regardless, and the death rate there is actually surprisingly low. But there we go. You learn something new every single day. I've got a lot of incoming messages, so that's all interesting. See, my mate sent me a picture of a beer. That's what I want right now. Oh, I could so use a beer right now, but here's what it is. But no, we're looking at sport and how financially vulnerable they are. The Premier League is one example. The NRL in Australia is another one, where how this current situation has shown how financially vulnerable they are and how reliant they actually are on the fans turning up week in, week out, buying tickets, buying merchandise, and being at the stadium, but also how badly run they are. We have seen with the IOC, with their debate over the Olympics, how long it took for them to, to actually suspend the Olympics and move the Olympics. They dilly-dallied over the decision. They came under a lot of criticism, the IOC. And when the IIHF decided to pull the plug on the World Championship of Ice Hockey, that should have been a sign for the IOC that a key player at that level had decided, this situation is not good enough at the moment. It's not safe enough to host our showpiece event. We're going to pull out. The IOC should have been going, the writing was on the wall then. I am surprised with the IOC holding on until the last minute, considering that UEFA and the IIHF, who are key players when it comes to the IOC, when it depends where the Olympics are organised, pulled their showpiece events sooner. Do I see different sports changing? Yes, I do. I think motorsport is going to be affected mostly financially. And we could see teams go out of business. We were already seeing with the F1 teams furloughing staff, and we're already seeing car development and rule changes push back. We're seeing the NRL is going to have to change. European football is going to have to change with the financial model they have in place. And rugby union, Augustine Pichot is deciding to run as the head of World Rugby. He's put his name forward, and he says World Rugby has to change. That's rugby union. He says with this current situation, we have to actually pay the players slightly less than they're currently getting paid in order for the game to financially survive this situation and grow and then become a wealthier game. He's actually arguing for pay cuts for players, which is interesting. But no, football I think has to change. The video I did yesterday over the impacts financial of the coronavirus on sport, I chose 4 leagues. 3 of those leagues have salary caps. 1 league doesn't. The losses that each league is potentially facing are in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds, dollars, and euros, depending on where in the world and what currency they use. I mean, the NBA has admitted that while play is suspended, on ticket revenue alone, they are losing a shade under $500 million. They're losing roughly around 450 million US dollars they have lost in ticket revenue while the league is suspended. The NHL averages out all 31 teams. So each in the NHL, and they're averaging out that per home game on average, because each arena is different size and there's different attendance averages. But they've averaged out the attendance for the season. They've broken it down. They're losing $1.3 million on ticket revenue a night alone per game. And then you've got to work out how many teams, have got home games left because they're right near the end of the season. And then you break that down per team what they're losing, but you work out how many games are actually left on the schedule. And if you're losing $1.3 million per night per game, let's say you've got a 6-game schedule that night. That is a lot of money that it starts adding up, and you start looking at very similar figures to the NBA. The NCAA March Madness has lost nearly $1 billion in just TV and marketing rights. So yes, when you could be the before and after event, I think this is the reason which will burst football's money bubble, and the fact that Tottenham are in talks with Manchester United of the possibility of Harry Kane. This is rumoured to go for £200 million. I don't think we're going to see a transfer record broken for at least a decade. I think that is insane. Um, an insane amount of money, which I don't think can be justified. I don't think the fans would accept a transfer that big. And with that transfer, the wages as well, I just don't see football's fan base or sports fans accepting these big contracts for a long time until the global economy recovers. The last time we were in this situation was the 1920s and 30s with the post World War One economic downturn that we had periods of the 20s and then the 1929 Wall Street crash. We haven't seen economics like this for 100 years, 90 years. Um, can the wages be justified? No. But other leagues, other sports other than European football, have led the way with players straight up going, we'll take wage cuts, we'll take wage deferrals within hours of their leagues being put on hiatus. European football, apart from a few noble exceptions, what we are seeing is a battle between the clubs and the players' associations, the trade union bodies that look after players' rights. Now, while I'm not in favour of some of the wages these players are getting paid, I think they're massively overpaid. They are right to go, we want our wages deferred rather than cut, because wage cuts have to be agreed by the union, wage deferrals have to be agreed by the union. We're putting forward as a union the wage deferral because that means that our governments, the governments that take our tax revenue, can pump that into the health services to keep people alive. If we take a wage cut, which means we're paying less tax. Now, we're not saying all football players are delightful human beings, because we know Messi, Mascherano, Xabi Alonso when he was playing, Ronaldo have all failed to pay taxes in Spain and Italy over their time and done tax avoidance and tax evasion schemes and have all been prosecuted for that. And they come to a deal where they pay a pittance of a fine out of the amount of tax they actually haven't paid on their earnings. But if we're going by the idea that, okay, these players are paying a 50% tax rate here in England, let's go, for example, they're paid 100,000 a week. They're only 50 grand a week after tax. That's before their mortgages, that's before their insurance and their cars, before their wag of a wife who wants to spend all the money on the credit card. In reality, they're not actually as much money as people think. With all the expenditure, they've got to pay their agents, the agents' fees. And at the end of the day, they might take home 15 grand out of that 100. Oh God! I mean, look. I think the only way I can see big wages continuing would be detrimental to fans. We would pay through the nose, and I don't think fans are willing to pay the money anymore. I think ticket prices was a flashpoint. The price of tickets, the price of merchandise has been a flashpoint in recent years when it comes to how much we have to pay. Man United's kit for this season was 140 quid for a jersey in an adult medium. £140 for one of these. That is madness. I mean, I look at some of the NHL and NFL gear; it's a similar price for full authentic replicas, so matching match jerseys. It's a similar price, but they are coming from North America, so you have the import tax, you have the VAT on top of that. But in reality, they cost pittance to make, and that is a massive markup on where merchandise prices were when the Premier League was set up in real terms. Player wages have exploded, and I think the only way that they can justify it is if the product is good enough. I actually honestly don't think the product is as good that they're putting on than it was 10, 15 years ago. I actually think the quality, skill level has actually dropped because average players are getting mega salaries for being bench warmers. It seems to me that the joy of the sport's been sucked out somewhat, and average players, are getting paid more than average wages. It doesn't surprise me that the NRL kits and all that comes from China or made in China on the cheap. I don't know how much it costs to purchase an NRL jersey or other memorabilia, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's on a similar par with what we find over here when it comes to replica jerseys and scarves. There is a markup. I know when I buy my ice hockey jerseys for my local team, they're made in the Czech Republic, so they're made in Europe. So you would think they would actually be more expensive. They're actually not as expensive as you think. They're well made. They're comfortable. They're not uncomfortable to wear in summer. They're very comfortable to wear in winter as well. You actually keep quite warm. Um, actually wearing them, they only cost 40 or 50 pounds. NHL gear is 150 quid, and you look who makes them as well. You're also paying for the brand that makes them. Um, what I have found is, yeah, there is a massive markup. That's one way to possibly justify play wages. Also, the sponsorships. That's another way that they can top up their massive earnings. I don't think fans are willing to pay the money anymore. And this current crisis is showing how badly governed sports are. It has really highlighted a failure in governance and transparency, because the NRL especially, they've managed to misappropriate 10 million Australian dollars out of the players' retirement fund, which is maybe a $30 million fund. 10 million of that is not where it should be. And that is also angered players, club CEOs who have to justify asking for help, like Penrith and Cronulla and all those clubs that have smaller budgets or precarious financial situations in recent years. They've had to be fully open and transparent with their books to a point. The NRL has not been fully clear and transparent with theirs. We do know the argument that the players, when they sign contracts or when they're debating a pay rise or a contract renewal or extension, that they've always said we're shown two books. There's two books in existence: the books that we're allowed to see, which show our actual earnings at the club, and the actual books that show the losses as well as the earnings. And that debate's been going on for 40, 50 years. We've seen it with the Major League Baseball, we've seen it with the NBA, the NFL, the NHL with all their player strikes and player lockouts and the labour unrest in North American sport. And the players have always said through their players' union, there's two books: the books that we see, and then the official books that no one sees apart from the accounts department that actually hide the losses. I don't wear this all the time, but it's actually very, very comfortable to wear. It's quite warm at the moment, so we're having a very warm Easter bank holiday in the mid-20s Celsius, which is in the 70s or the 80s Fahrenheit. But it's actually quite comfortable. I like this Dolphins jersey, even though I'm not a Dolphins fan. It is really comfortable to wear. It's a good material. This is what I mean about jerseys. This is actually really comfortable to wear. It's got a good, the air pockets under here. The logos, while they're not the best logos in the world, and the numbers, they're not too plasticky. They're not as nice as my NHL jerseys. I will admit the NHL jerseys which are stitched on. These are steam printed on. So eventually these will fade over time. But it is an authentic because it's got the label. And that's what I always look for with my jerseys. Does it have an authentic label, wherever it may be? It's got the authentic NFL there. I've got my 49ers one as well. I'll have to do a jersey review of some of my new jerseys that I've added. So I got given this and a 49ers jersey by a work colleague who's also a subscriber, my mate Jason from work. He's probably not watching this right now. But yes, when I look for sports gear of the teams that I follow, I always try and find as authentic as possible. None of my hockey jerseys are a fake, apart from one, which is a cheap replica, but it's not actually technically a fake, which is really surprising. But the amount of fake jerseys you will find is out there, and this is where, again, they have to mark up the prices of merchandise because the amount of fakes, that's a problem. It's a catch-22. The more they raise the prices, the more the fakes enter the market to undercut the official merchandise. I look at what is it? Club merch, team merchandise 10, 15 years ago. It's a good 30% less in real terms. You look at inflation and deflation than it is now. And you have to look at the amount of fakes that have entered the market. It's unreal. But I can show you how I can tell all my jerseys are official and authentic, because it's where the labels, the size labels are. If it's from one of the North American leagues, it will have one of these, or the little, on the more modern NHL ones and NFL ones, it'll have a button similar to this, which is made of metal that is harder to fake than the plastic or rubber, because they realised even this is fakeable. I will dig out some of my NHL. My NHL ones are currently in the wash, but I've got a World Championship 1992 Canada jersey made by Bauer. The label the stitching, the arm stitching, all of it's perfect. I've currently, what else have I got? I've got a lot of Jersey 53 make all the Bracknell Bees stuff, and a lot of the other jerseys for the British ice hockey. All we got to look for is the funky face on the label on the inside, and Jersey 53 with the 53 number. If that doesn't look right, you can just tell by the quality of the label and the quality of the material. It's something to look. You get used to looking for the fakes, but if you are as I find into my official gear, I don't mind paying full price for a jersey, or if it's reduced on the main website. I don't mind going on the NFL or the NHL, or even got this through a friend of mine gave me this is a New Era Major League Baseball hat. I think it's the Astros. It's one of their original. I think it's the Astros original logo or something. Got it for free, but it is official, and it has, as I say, you have to look inside. It's got one size fits all, the New Era registered, which is perfect, and it's got the official merchandise. It at one point did have the Snapback official label there as well, but it does actually have the New Era logo on the side. It is completely perfect. My Winnipeg Jets hat is currently in the wash. I've got my Aprilia MotoGP jacket. Again, you can find the fakes. But yeah, China do produce a lot of the fakes. So do Vietnam. You will have Thailand, Taiwan. A lot of the fake bootleg merchandise comes from either Eastern Europe. The Russians are quite good at making fakes, and Southeast Asia. They are renowned for the pirated DVD, the fake jersey, the fake designer gear. It is frustrating, and that then leads to a knock-on effect with the rise in merchandise prices. What is also quite interesting is a lot of the factories that make the official merchandise are also in China, which is again really really frustrating. But we know a lot of the NHL gear that was made by CCM and Bauer in days past was made in Canada. I think Reebok, then eventually Adidas outsourced those factories elsewhere. I think Indonesia make a lot of Adidas stuff. I have to see some of my Adidas gear, which is a problem. They make it cheaper, but they mark it up so much. It is what it is. I have bought fake merchandise in the past. I don't do it anymore. I don't buy fakes anymore. There's no point. It looks tacky. It falls apart, and you make yourself look cheap. When you're out and about, and let's say you're at a big sporting event, or you're at a posh dinner party or something, and you're wearing a fake Versace suit, you can tell the stitching falls apart. It doesn't look right. It's poor fabric. It can actually have chemicals in it that irritate your skin. I have bought fake merchandise in the past, but there is no point. The manufacturing quality is not good enough. They can put all sorts of chemicals in there that in the clothing dye, for example, that irritate your skin. There's a health issue behind it, and it looks tacky. And I've had fake merchandise before. I've been to car boot sales. I've bought cheap knockoffs, but I wouldn't advise it. And they don't last very long, and then you end up having to buy more clothes. I wouldn't say. I think eBay are actually. You have to actually tell eBay when you're advertising it is a replica or not. It's not a knockoff. It's made to look like a Levi's or a Polo Ralph Lauren, whatever. It's not actually a fake. You have to actually put in the description it is a replica of. I think the worst website is Wish. Wish is well known that a lot of the stuff is made in China. It is fakes. It's not what it looks like on the box, and it's a rip-off. Wish is the new what eBay was originally when it came to fake merchandise. You can still get a fair few counterfeit goods on eBay because people lie in the descriptions, private sellers. But Wish is well known where it's legitimate. Whole companies have been set up to make just sweatshop fakes of everything, including some really important, climbing gear like safety hard is fake. Well, actually, I have sold some Ralph Lauren and stuff, some old clothes that I grew out of that I just got old on eBay. I have sold stuff on eBay, designer gear, but when it's well used and it's quite old, you don't necessarily get the money. But when you have someone selling designer gear like Ralph Lauren from new for so cheap, then you have to start questioning that's a fake. It's very easy to spot a fake on eBay. It's not so easy on Wish because Wish is just full of fakes. But when it comes to sports gear, yeah, that is a massive problem that the merchandise companies that make the replica jerseys have a lot of problem dealing with. Um, and one of the reasons why they mark up the jersey prices, which is frustrating for fans. But then you're forced to then go and get. A lot of people do go and buy the cheaper gear because they can't afford the prices of the legitimate. But this is part of the reason why certain clubs have a lot of money. Is their merchandise is very, very popular. Manchester United, while they haven't been playing very well in recent seasons, they haven't been very successful on the trophy front, and when their league finishing position, they they have made a lot of money through their sponsorship deals and their merchandise sales. They sell a lot of merchandise around the world. They make a hell of a lot of money, and that is one of the reasons why they haven't had to furlough any staff yet. They're one of the few clubs recently, even though they have a lot of debt with the Glazers, how they bought the club, they haven't had to furlough staff. Whereas other teams that have less of an impact on the global footballing world when it comes to fan base and merchandise sales and finances are having to furlough staff. They're having to look at really asking the players to take wage cuts. Real football kits cost like £60. It varies. If it's kid sizes, yes, they are affordable. But if it's adult sizes, they are really, really expensive. I remember when I got my Liverpool '97, I think it was the Champions League or UEFA Cup third alternate kit, bright yellow one. We are going back 23 years here to when I was a 8-year-old. But for my 8th birthday. But I did receive a Liverpool kit. Even though I'm not a Liverpool fan, my dad was, so thought it'd be a brilliant idea to get me one of them. It was a full replica kit, kid size. There's no VAT on it, and VAT and prices and inflation was a lot less than it is now. It still cost about 35, 40 quid for a full socks, shorts, top. Still cost a fair bit of money for a full replica kit. What it would cost now, God knows. I would dare to say we're looking at double the price. So yeah, a full kids replica kit costs like 60 quid. On the adult side of things, I do know that a Man United home jersey was costing about 130, 140 pound at the start of the season for this season's kit. Home and away were both 140 pound. I remember when the World Cup was on, when Nigeria released their what I would call the ugliest football jersey ever worn. They sold out within 6-8 hours of being put on general sale. And they were going for about £80 new. But when people had bought them in bulk, they were whacking on eBay for 120 to 400, £500 on resale, which doesn't surprise me either. And there were a lot of fakes of those World Cup kits around, of the Nigerian ones, because they were so popular. Some of the less popular ones, and I always hark back to the NHL and the NRL because they're two sports that I know a lot about. The smaller fan bases, so your Arizonas, your Winnipegs, they have smaller fans, a smaller fan base. They sell less merchandise than New York Rangers or Chicago Blackhawks. There are more fake Blackhawks, Detroit Red Wings, Rangers gear than Winnipeg Jets or Arizona Coyotes because they sell more kits and the demand is there from the fan base to buy the the replica jersey. When they run out of that size, you're going to have a lot more fakes flooding the market because the demand is there. So this is where you look at. You will have a lot of fake Man United kits. You will have a lot of fake Juventus kits. You will have a lot of fake Barcelona, Real Madrid, because the demand is there globally. When it comes to clubs like Southend United, they're probably going to sell 20,000 replica jerseys a year for the fan base. That's it, done. Manchester United probably sell that many kits in an hour. And so, how many fake Southend United jerseys are you going to find on the market? Probably maybe one dodgy guy who's worked out, okay, we can knock off a few and flog them down Southend Market, possibly. But there's not going to be many. There's not going to be many, if any at all. Whereas Man United, big name, big brand, people are going to want to buy it. There's going to be a limited allocation for each country of Man United kits. They're going to sell out. People are still going to want to have a Man United kit. they want to get their hands on one. Miracle on Ice, American sports history. Ooh, that is an interesting one. It depends on what you call good and bad history, because you've got the Black Sox scandal of 1919. You've got the various lockouts in the NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and NFL player strikes. And I can look at the history of. I've looked at the history of the player strikes in Major League Baseball, and there's a lot of them. I'm surprised that video didn't get more views. I've looked at the NHL lockouts. They are big, impactful events. You want to talk about the best moments? You've got McEnroe and Connors at Wimbledon. Their rivalry in the 70s and 80s is well renowned. The Miracle on Ice against the Soviet Union, because it was so political, so political. That is an interesting one. It comes on the back of the Summit Series, which was played in the 70s. There was lots of Summit Series between the Red Army team and various teams like the Broad Street Bullies, who were the only team to beat them in that series. And you have to think of the political side of things as well. It was at Lake Placid, home Olympics. They had been thrashed, I think 8 or 9-1 a few months before by this team. And then they go on and do what they did and win gold. That is in itself one of the moments. But Jesse Owens winning all those Olympic golds in the Berlin Olympics of '36, I think, is another one. But Lake Placid is actually where the Olympics were held in upstate New York. And while Lake Placid has obviously a horror film, Lake Placid was where the Olympics were held that year. And absolutely, the Miracle on Ice ranks quite highly because of the you look at the political tension around that time, with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the US boycott of the Summer Olympics in Moscow, the Soviet boycott of the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, the Summit Series of the 70s, where the Red Army team, which is basically CSKA Moscow now, playing against the Montreal Canadiens, the Islanders, and all these other teams, and only the Broad Street Bullies of the Flyers could beat them, and they basically beat them up. The Chicago Bulls dynasty, possibly, but then you have to look at Lombardi winning all those Super Bowls and the Lombardi Trophy, and then you have to look at the Patriots dynasty with Brady and all those Super Bowls that they've won. But then you have to look at as a whole. I don't know. I think the Miracle on Ice is up there, definitely. And having watched the film and actually know the history behind the team and the fact that the Soviet team had battered them quite convincingly months before, absolutely hammered them, and then they go on and do that in the Winter Olympics. That is something to talk about. The Falcons, the comeback against the Falcons, I wouldn't say that's a great American sport moment as an individual nation, but it is definitely a moment in sports history. It's one of the biggest choke jobs out there. But then I think you could look at the USA beating England in the World Cup in, was it 1950, 1-0. That I think would rank quite highly because they were an amateur team, beating a fully professional international team that was possibly renowned at that time as one of the best football teams in the world. You could look at any multitude of Super Bowls or World Series or Stanley Cup finals for team sporting moments of club teams or franchise teams, league teams, doing great things. Jimmy Johnson winning his, I think, 7th NASCAR title you put up there. But then you have to look at national. You've got the basketball in the Olympics against the Soviets. You have a whole host of Olympic gold medals that American athletes have won. And yeah, if you think, social, if let's say 50, 60 years ago, social media is what it is now, that would be utterly bananas what would have happened. I think a lot of players who played for England would never have played for England ever again. I think coaches would have been sacked. I think that's the problem with social media, though, is trial by social media. I think it's putting a lot of excess pressure on athletes and people in public life. You don't seem to get away with what you get away with then. But no, if social media was a thing, I think the pressure on those players, I think, um, yeah, they would definitely not not have a happy time of it. I think they would definitely feel the wrath of fan base more. But I think that kind of relationship between fan and players has always had that hint of pressure. There are some, and when ex players talk about the most intimidating atmospheres to play in, or the best atmospheres to play in, or the most fun stadiums to play in that wasn't the home team, they will always talk about certain fan bases and the hatred of the opposition, but also the abuse they gave their own team when their own team wasn't playing well. You have to look at the Australian cricket fan, and you have to read Phil Tufnell's book on the Ashes. That's really interesting. Um, we'll see what happens there uh, with with the Sky News. I think no, I think this is a sign that we're going to play behind closed doors, so they are going to get their games played. And Sky have said they're going to have to find other ways if we don't to make up the money. I think the backlash that Sky would face, or is going to face, is front of their minds. Honestly, Sky and BT have been heavily criticised for the amount they charge their subscribers. And as an EE customer, I know how bad BT are because it's part of the BT group, and I'm not overly enamoured with how they. Oh yeah, Welsh fans versus me. Yeah, Welsh rugby union fans, rugby league fans not so much. They're all right. Football fans actually a pretty decent bunch as well. It's rugby union fans, especially of the national team. When I discuss Welsh provincial teams and their struggles, it's a different kettle of fish. When it comes to the national side and criticising how the national team play, even when they're winning, I said that they're not winning well. They're winning games, but they're winning ugly. That's going to affect them in the World Cup. I got loads of abuse, tons of it, and then they fluffed it in the World Cup semi-final, and then this Six Nations, they've looked a completely different team up to when the Six Nations was cancelled and put on hold. The Welsh didn't look right. And yes, there's a new coach in there, and then the Rob Howley situation. Um, Questions have to be asked of the integrity of the Welsh coaching setup and the players. Are with Rob Howley there? Uh, with the cut-off point, this is what UEFA are saying. Oh, I've swallowed a bit of dust there. UEFA have basically said they have three options on the table to restart domestic club seasons. They're looking at the last 2 weeks of May, so in about a month's time onwards, the first 2 weeks of June, some point in that period, or the final day, the 30th of June, as the final option to restart domestic seasons. If they cannot get all 55 league structures in Europe that are members of UEFA to restart their seasons by the last day of June, we will lose the Champions League and we may have seasons voided. But at the moment, with UEFA coming out and saying they've lifted the 3 o'clock, the 3 p.m. blackout on British games, so broadcasting rights, it's a sure sign that when leagues do restart, behind closed doors. And they're going to have to give 2 to 3 weeks notice of a restart date, which is very difficult in this current climate with the current changes to lockdown rules and infection rates and health rates. And I've also found out I have two relatives who are ill right now that have tested positive in the last couple of days, so I'm a little bit not overly uh, happy about that. But with the current fluctuation of the situation, how fluid it is, if UEFA are going to plan this, they're going to have it behind closed doors as a minimum, and they're going to have contingency plans in place to somehow get all the players in the various leagues in a location and try and use a couple of stadiums. And they work out the fixture list that's left and play those games. What happens then to the Champions League, Europa League, and the domestic cup competitions? They will probably could most likely be sacrificed. The UEFA have basically said the Champions League, Europa League's on hold indefinitely. If they cannot play the remaining games, or they are planning a 3-week mini tournament both in August, then they will void the rest of that. And then what happens to the teams that have made the knockout stages and qualified from last year? Will they automatically be put forward? We don't know. So Atalanta, the only team to qualify for the quarterfinals, does that mean they automatically qualify for the next Champions League? Considering they're the only team to have reached that stage before the Champions League was suspended. That's an interesting one. The fact that Leeds and Liverpool fans, I think, no, we played a percentage of the season. I think I personally, football is not my favourite sport. I think I've been asked the question, what sports are going to get back to normal the quickest? I think ice hockey is most likely the sport that's either going to try and figure out, especially with the NHL and the AHL and ECHL, play their playoffs and the rest of the regular season, and then start next season with a condensed schedule where they will get rid of the mid-season break, the All-Star break, and all that, and just go straight through. Or they're the ones that are going to go, right, we're going to avoid this, we're not going to worry about this, and we're just going to have an extended pre-season. We've got to get the draft in, we've got to get the free agency, and then re-begin trading for players and get pre-season started and then training camps. I think I've been asked what leagues and what sports are going to get back normal the quickest. The NRL has put a provisional date of the 28th of May. That's going to change. But they said it would be suspended indefinitely. The AFL have put a provisional date of the 31st of April. That's going to change. When leagues and teams and sports put provisional dates down, they're putting pressure on themselves. If they say they have suspended indefinitely, that allows flexibility. My gut feeling is they probably looking at things at the moment, how things are so bad in so many countries, Italy, Spain, and here are worse than other parts of Europe. I cannot see how they're going to do it. There's travel restrictions in place. If you're going to find a neutral location like Germany, for example, all the squads ref in the Champions League, they're going to have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine before they can start playing. Then they have to play games. Before they can travel back, they might have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine or get tested before they leave. And when they return, again, 2 weeks in quarantine. And whether those players individually are going to obey it, because we know Carl Walker's already breached lockdown rules. We know Tottenham and Jose Mourinho and certain taking a few players on a training exercise have breached. These are young guys who live a playboy lifestyle in football, and they're probably not going to behave as well as they should. On the my gut feeling, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they will void. But the financial consequences to football, as we have found out, are so severe, we're going to have to see a change in how the sport's governed. We could see clubs and leagues go out of business, especially at the lower levels. And then the footballing pyramid is going to be affected. And then we're going to see player development and strength depth of playing depth affected as well. Bury already going out of business, for example, in August, before this crisis even took place, showed how badly governed the sport is and how badly the rules work already. No, I don't know how that. I just think, yeah, they've been told they've got a 2-year suspension from the Champions League. I think there should still remain a 2-season suspension from when they can resume football. To be honest, I think the ownership and the plastic fans at Man City are much like the plastic fans of Man United. Real fans, will support the club through the dark times as well as the good. And what we're seeing right now with both Man City and Man United is the real fans are being sounded out by the plastics. I've had this debate on the channel with some Man City fans who have only really cared about the club since they've had money. It's fashionable to follow them, really isn't. There's a reason why it's called the empty Etihad, and they have to pump fake crowd noise in to make it seem busier than it actually is. And also where they place the TV cameras as well. That man at the Etihad is telling when they have the whole upper tier empty. It's a joke of a club, really. They've knowingly been breaking financial fair play over their sponsorship deal with Etihad Airways for the entire time they've been sponsored by Etihad Airways. I don't know why they didn't stay at Main Road, but they moved to the City Stadium long before the owners came along. Good 5-6 years before they were bought by Sheikh Mansour. They had moved from Main Road, which is a shame. They left the old Main Road, but at the same time they wanted to be more modern, fresh start, new era. But it took them a good 9 years to win any silverware, from moving from Main Road to what is now the Etihad Stadium, the City of Manchester Stadium. It took them a good 9 years to lift their first trophy. I think it was 2011 when they won their first trophy. I think it was 36 years or something without silverware. A lot of Man City fans don't know the history of the club. And I think I've got do a little history video. BT's been propped up by EE and PlusNet and BT Internet is propping BT Mobile and all that are propping up Tesco Mobile and all that are propping up BT Sport. BT Sport is losing money hand over fist, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do ask for their remaining cash back from the Premier League, which is around 36 million. If they don't get that back, I can definitely see my bill going up for EE, which I won't be happy about because it's already gone up twice under this current contract, and I've been fuming about that. Took out my internet contract with the week they raised it, so I went bananas, and so they quickly dropped it back down again because I said, how within a week of my contract can you raise my bill? I was told for 18 months my bill will be static. Like you've missold me a product, then I will take it to financial ombudsman. Oh yeah, no, we'll drop it back down again. Good. But no, BT Sport bought the remains of ESPN, which bought the remains of Setanta. But no, the football pundits, they're not actually directly employed by BT. They're actually contracted to BBC, Sky, Premier, Talksport. They're not directly employed by BT. They're actually borrowed. Very few of them are actually solely contracted to BT, apart from Jake Humphrey, who's an overpaid moron because he knows nothing of sport. He's just there to talk words, and he shows how ignorant and thick he is the entire time. He's on multi-million-pound contract to be there. He has no sports knowledge. He was terrible at the BBC. They were happy to get rid of him. And the pundits, the presenters, the studio people, Robbie Savage and co, they're not BT Sport employees. They are borrowed from other companies, other TV firms, other media firms, and they're in a debate about whether we're going to get paid. We've got to get paid for our services. You've contracted us as third parties. You're not paying us. You're not paying your contractors. And BT is in a position where, yeah, they are overrated, they are overpaid, but they have signed contracts and by a third party. It's a complex. BT has dug itself a hole. They put their foot in it. They got a bad business model. They're not making any money. They basically bought the rump of what was Setanta and ESPN in the UK, which hadn't been bought by Eurosport. Eurosport picked up the rest, the good bits of ESPN. BT picked up the crap bits of ESPN, and that hemorrhages money. And it's just viewership. I mean, their viewership's crap. You look at, I think it was Tottenham Arsenal, one of the biggest club rivalries in English football. The average, I think the viewership was under 90,000 people for that game. The penalty shootout against Colombia had like 24 million people watching free to air. It's sort of a sign that free to air TV for sport works, and they've oversaturated the market with subscription TV a little bit. And yeah, BT, there's loads of platforms that aren't doing so well out of this, and I don't know what the future holds for things like BT Sport. BT Sport was struggling from the day it was incepted. It was meant to be a free-to-air channel on Freeview and Freesat. That didn't materialise. That lasted a few weeks. They then put it on subscription. They keep raising the subscription price, and they're losing viewers and losing money. Their running costs are higher than the amount of money they make, and they are being propped up by other arms of the business. It cannot continue. You would think you're paying a subscription, you won't have to deal with adverts. You're dealing with adverts. They've taken the Champions League and Europa League off free-to-air TV, which is a big no-no, which hasn't gone down well with fans. But they put it up on YouTube on a really bad feed, where you still get all the ads. You still get the YouTube ad breaks as well on a live stream. And you can see how crap the quality of production is. And now, last year, they turned off the live comments because they couldn't take the criticism from 2018. When I was watching 2018, they were getting hammered hand and fist about how poor, the Europa League especially, the quality of production values. They were getting hammered. They turned off they turned off the live comments. So you couldn't criticise them. They can't take criticism of how bad they are. And yeah, BT might go. BT Sport, the BT Group might go. Is it worth having this TV arm? It's hemorrhaging money. and looks like it could please well. That's the plan. Is yes, the UEFA are planning. I'll do a video on this. They are planning. It's a contingency plan to basically have it as a straight knockout tournament, very similar to the World Cup knockout stages or Euro knockout stages, where it takes all one leg games in a 3-week period. It's a game every 3 or 4 days for teams, most likely. Is it doable? Yes. It is contingent, however, on all the European leagues restarting by the 30th of June. If the leagues haven't restarted by that point, no football, no Champions League, no Europa League. They have said it's a contingency plan. It's not confirmed. They are planning to do it. But in that case, if you're going to do it in August, you're going to have to basically tell all the clubs that are still involved, they've got to get their players over to whatever country they decide, like Germany, Sweden, Finland, whatever country they decide hosting is going to be behind closed doors. We know that. They can play it in Finland. The infection rate in Finland, the infection rate in Denmark, the Scandinavian countries are doing really, really well. There is a reason for that. They have a very good vaccination program for kids with things like TB, so the BCG jab. That's compulsory. They could, in theory, play the games behind closed doors in Scandinavia. If that is the case, then they're going to have to contact the teams that are still in the Champions League and Europa League and find out a couple of stadiums, and they're going to have to quarantine all the players for 2 weeks. And then they're going to have to keep them in a bubble, away from the media, away from fans. And that also then means when the games are over that the players go straight back to the undisclosed location, so the training camp. When a team is knocked out, because there are still second legs to be played before the quarterfinals, Atalanta are the only team through to the quarterfinal stage. So if they cannot get the Champions League restarted, do they just award the title to Atalanta? If they cannot get the Serie A and the Champions League and Europa League restarted, do they just award the title to Atalanta? Or if they void the season, do they just re-qualify for the Champions League for the following year? This is questions. Atalanta are the only team through to the quarterfinal stage. Do they just award the title to them if nothing else happens, because they're the only team to get through to that stage? BT didn't. BT, they have. I think, they are brainstorming. If you bear with me a moment, I'm going to put my whiteboard away because I don't need the whiteboard and it's in the way. But I will still talk. So basically, what you're looking at is UEFA last week came out and said the Champions League and Europa League are on hold indefinitely. We have no plans currently to restart these tournaments. We want to get club football completed first. That was UEFA's planning. That's UEFA's thinking, and it is the right way to think about it. There is more money in the domestic leagues. It makes more TV revenue. There's more games. They sell the rights to the Asian market and the North American market. They make a lot of money for the overseas broadcast rights for those leagues, especially the big five. The big five make UEFA and the domestic leagues. Domestic football a lot of money. I'm going to replay. Now, oh shit! Now I've got to replug this. Oh, I hate this. Better, right? Now we're all set up. That's better. There we go. Now we've manoeuvred everything. What's the time? But we're looking at the BT, they overinflated the market. Now, I think Atalanta were the first team to qualify for the quarterfinals. I think they have the best group stage record. I think they've got the best record in the Champions League this season. They are the dark horse. I think, Atletico Madrid did knock out Liverpool, but did they actually qualify for the quarter-final stage? I know they knocked them out in the knockout stages, but did they get far enough? Because it's a double-legged thing. Did they play the next round? It's interesting. Atalanta, yes, they've been playing very well over recent seasons. They are dark horses. But they're actually at the centre of the outbreak, where they play in Bergamo, which is in Lombardy, which is the second city of Lombardy after Milan. The death rate there is horrific. The the hospital, the lockdown. I mean, I've got family who live out in Italy and in that region, and Bergamo has been really badly impacted. Atalanta are an interesting club. Every newborn child gets given an Atalanta jersey, and the parents get given baby milk solution as a free gift. They help in the community. They're a very community-based club, and it is the soul of the city. Is the club. BT Sport, on the other hand, yes, I think they have overinflated and damaged the football market when they did overbid the Premier League rights. When they got the Champions League rights as well, I think that was a mistake in this country to take them off free to air, and they should have been joint rights. They got sole rights. People have complained about that since they got it. There's been fan complaints. It's gone as high as the Digital Media Select Committee of Parliament. And yeah, I think this is the turning point of football financially. I think we are going to see a change in football finances and sport as well. I think motorsport is going to be impacted. I think international sport, global sport, is going to be impacted on things like the Olympics and World Cups and other similar like kind of events. I'm just having a look at all the news that's coming through. My Facebook's gone mad. But I think got that dinging away in the background. I do think we have reached a turning point with professional sport. I think what we're seeing is the amount of money that sports TV firms are losing, and not only that, but the leagues themselves. We have to ask the question about, with the multi-billion and trillion-dollar TV rights packages that are in place, why is it then that the leagues and sports, they haven't got a rainy day fund, they haven't saved a lot of this money? Where has this money gone? Why is it that the NRL, the players, were being urged to take pay cuts or wage deferrals, and the NRL Players Association, their players union, went to the NRL? Some investigative journalists found out that 10 million Australian dollars has gone missing. So questions about sports finances, governance and transparency, we're going to have to see a change in how sport is governed, how transparent the finances are, and player wages, prize money as well, where sponsorship money goes, where, who gets what, who gets, are wages going to actually in real terms fall? Because I actually think that when we have these wage deferrals or wage cuts, depending on how what the PFA decide, or what happens in the NHL, what happens in the NRL, what happens in Major League Baseball, when we come out of this, when sport restarts again, will we actually see these wage cuts, these wage deferrals becoming a bit of a more permanent thing? Will we see players earn less money? BT Sport and Sky Sports are seeing a drop in the number of subscribers. Therefore, the remaining subscriptions are going to cost more money. This is why they were basically threatening to ask for their money back. But BT Sport has been struggling from day one. The day it was launched, it had problems financially. The guy who actually, in the BT boardroom, came up with the idea of let's start up a sports network has already been sacked. We know that they've lost huge sums of money. I think nearly £250 million they've lost since the inception of the network. Honestly, it is a shame that, unfortunately, it couldn't rival Sky in a good way. It is a shame that it wasn't more accessible. And if it was going to be subscription only, why it wasn't cheaper? Why it wasn't put on Freeview? Why it wasn't put on FreeSat? Why BT and EE actually phoned me up trying to sell me BT Sport, and I said no. So I'm not interested. I said I'm already paying enough for my phone and internet as it is. You've made it as difficult as possible for me to combine both bills together and move my bills from 2 separate days to the same day on the 1st of each month. You've already raised my bill twice. mid-contract, which when I signed said contracts, I was told that wouldn't happen. Your customer service is a joke. I listed off a whole host of issues that I had with EE and BT. And when I was living here the first time before I moved, my grandparents were having issues with their internet, and I got customer service on the phone. You're aware my grandparents are shareholders of this company. You don't give them the internet they're paying for. Well, head office are going to get a letter because they're paying for a package that you are not giving them. You haven't informed them they were due for an upgrade. They quickly fixed the problem. I kicked off. They quickly gave me a lot of freebies. They quickly fixed the problem that I had with them. My internet still isn't great. It's still not at the speed it should be at and of the range. So they're going to get another phone call at some point saying, "You promised me a service, you cannot deliver it. I'm not willing to pay this crap anymore. You're raising my bill. It's higher than what it should be. Rival providers are providing the same service for cheaper. So therefore, I'm considering switching provider. Explain to me why I should stay with you guys." And the only thing they can say to me is, "I will give you free stuff. We'll give you BT. I don't want BT Sport. I don't want another phone. I don't want another phone line." And they're desperate for people to re-sign up for BT Sport. So when you're an existing customer and you're unhappy with the service and you complain, they try and get you to sign up for BT Sport. They try and give you some discount on it for a period of time. Do not sign up for it. Whether BT Sport survives, we shall see. I don't think so. I do think at some point BT are going to have to look at the BT Sport arm and either change and restructure how it's made available to the wider public. They have an opportunity, which Premier Sports filled the void. Premier Sports is the fastest growing sports subscription channel network out there. They've grown from one channel to three. They've got free sports. In theory, everyone who's got a digital aerial set up can get free sports if they tune it in their TV and right. They're nicking. They've managed to ping the Chinese football rights. I think they pinged the Belarusian football rights. So they're finding live sport around the world in countries which, at the end of the day, have less than desirable human rights records. But they are finding ways to, fill the void. They're picking up bits and pieces. Ironically, BT and Sky are losing. They're picking up Serie A games. They're picking up La Liga games. They're picking up, the Portuguese league, the Dutch league, the Belgian. They're picking up leagues that Sky and BT have gone, they're not worth it. They're smaller European leagues. They're the less desirable games, and it's actually turned out to Premier Sports' advantage. They are less per month to pay for, and Free Sports is actually a surprisingly good little channel. Unfortunately, my Digibox for some reason doesn't want to. The area that we've got is older and doesn't want to play ball, but they're nicking BT Sport customers that have become fed up with the service. They're nicking Sky customers who've become fed up with the service, and they're growing rapidly with subscriptions, and they're far more affordable. Yes, the production values aren't massive, but they're not overpaying their pundits stupid money. It's more simple, cost effective. It's good quality. It's just simple. There's none of this pre-match build-up for like an hour and a half, waffling on about crap. They just, there's a game, kicks off in 5 minutes. We'll start the broadcast then, 5 minutes, quickly, in we go, bang. We've got a commentator out there or a commentator back in the studio commentating via wirelessly. We'll just do it that way. They do it far better. They don't overpay their staff. They pay their staff right. It's a good little number. Top 3 least favourite pundits. I've got a load of them. Carragher's on there. Definitely. Graham Souness. Mark Pugat. Crossed with Glenn Hoddle. I mean, Glenn Hoddle, he's a footballing man, but he doesn't have that excitement in his voice. He's not like an Ian Wright, who's also a footballing man. He's also got a lot of energy. He's very bland. I think Glenn Hoddle is the footballing. He's a very good tactician. He's got a very good mind, but he comes across as a very uninspiring expert. Joe, I don't watch BT Sports, so I'm free of that disaster, but I do watch the England internationals. I do watch the FA Cup. I think Lee Dixon, I think he's been doing it now for a good 15 years since he retired from playing. Martin Keown's I find Martin Keown good fun. I think he's very, very different from what he was as a player. He was very a firebrand as a player, as a pundit, as an expert, as a colour commentator. I would say in North American parlance, as the ex-player, he is very insightful and very observant of what he's looking at. Steve Claridge, I'm so thankful I have to watch many broadcasts where he's commentating. Gerrard now is obviously managing, so he's got less media appearances. Phil Neville, again, managing, again, less media appearances. But again, Phil Neville, very good footballing brain. It's just unfortunate that when he talks, he doesn't have that explosive personality. He comes across as dull, when actually he's very intelligent. And it's just how he doesn't have a very inspiring voice, but he's very, very intelligent. And I think because I think you have to look at things and go, okay, he's a very decorated player. He's quite a competent coach, but as a commentator, I don't think he has the voice for it. He has the knowledge for it, it's not necessarily the personality or the voice for it. I think there's a little bit of personality to commentate. I think we're losing that. I think Steve Claridge is God. I'd rather have my. I mean, I like Chris Kamara because he makes so many errors as well. He's quite funny, but he has personality. He has passion. It's the Sky Sports version of Ian Wright, except with a few more errors in his broadcasts. But he's exceptionally funny. He's good fun to listen to. He's quite fun. I like Chris Kamara. He's made a career of being himself. Which is, I get asked this question, my favourite and least favourite commentators and pundits. It depends on the sport, but when it comes to English football, I think we have too many pundits. We have too many ex-players who really just, if they weren't doing punditry, they would have no career, and they would have, they're trying to stay relevant, not fade into obscurity. I've met Steve Coppell. He is really boring. Really boring. I met Alan Pardew as well. He's an arse. Colourful character, but an arse. Jonathan Pearce, yes, Jonathan Pearce is a very, very interesting. And Dion Dublin, they do a lot for the women's game. They really champion the women's game. And not just to go, oh yes, just watch women's football for the sake of it. They really have champions the women's game. They do a lot of the commentary, and Dion Dublin, I think, he comes across as very, very intelligent. I like Dion Dublin. I like Jonathan Pearce, and I get asked this question a lot about my favourite and least favourite commentators. I think we have too many. I do like Leroy Rossini. I think he is very, very, very underrated when it comes to his expert knowledge on the game. I think he should get more punditry gigs. I think he should be given a bigger profile. I think Craig Bellamy, though, I'm not a big fan of Bellamy. He's got a temperament that, much like Joey Barton, much like Carragher, the temperament is the problem. And then you have that scandal and that, like a Carragher situation, or where something happens which isn't a great thing. Yeah, Jonathan Pearce, his commentary on BBC back in the day, Channel 5. You couldn't knock Jonathan Pearce for his knowledge, his commentary. It's more like calming commentary. He doesn't get overly excited, but you just have to listen to that knowledge he has on the sport. I think very underrated commentator, but he started commentating in the shadow of Motson and others who have commentated, not just football, but a variety of sports. He came along in the shadow of John Motson. And yeah, Jonathan Pearce used to do a lot of commentary when Channel 5 had a lot of football rights, especially for the UEFA Cup, which became the Europa League, which they got moved to ITV. He did do a lot of commentary on Channel 5. But I do get asked the question regularly about my favourite and least favourite commentators, but it's always to do with football. It's never to do with other sports. And I think there are certain commentators in other sports that I just cannot stand.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh no, that's going to be a violation of something there. Let's go through all my various notifications and see if there's any sports related bits and bobs on there, but not really. So it's all random stuff. But no, I think having the right commentary set up, be it play-by-play and a colour commentator. I think how many commentators do you need? Some sports broadcasts they go overkill with 5 or 6. You don't need that many. You don't need that many people talking over each other. And I've noticed it more with North American sports. They're trying to get as many commentators as possible, and I think that's overkill. When you're watching the game, you're listening to the commentary or listening already. You've got 5 or 6 people talking. I think it overdoes it. Martin Tyler. Again, I'm not a BT Sport or Sky Sports viewer, so then we're having to look at ITV and BBC and Channel 4 and Channel 5 and the limited broadcasts that they have in comparison to what they're used to. Certain commentators, I think, get overused. And again, you could argue Jonathan Davis when it comes to rugby league and rugby union. He really makes me want to just turn the sound off. I find his views outdated. The same with Jeremy Guscott and all that. They stopped playing rugby over 20 years ago, and yes, while they have their views, I think their views are dated because the sport has moved on, so to speak. The sport of rugby union has moved on from their playing days, and I think we need some more relevant commentators. The only thing to mind was the Celtic Blackburn games. Yes, they were back in the day quite interesting. Good fun to watch. I think it is a shame that we have lost European club football from free-to-air TV in a sense. I think it is a crying our shame. I think Ofcom and BBC, who grant the licenses, have to hang their heads a little bit there. And I think if BT Sport does go belly up, I think Sky and a terrestrial channel will bid for the Champions League rights again as dual rights and shared rights because it worked beautifully. You could have the majority of the games on Sky and a pick selection of games on free to air, not too many, and you would have a game on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and then you would have the Europa League on a Thursday, and you would have 2 or 3 nights of good quality European club football that would keep you entertained, and you might have more than one game on the TV a night on, let's say, ITV4 or on the old Europa League. You might have 2 games back to back on a broadcast, which was great fun. And yeah, I think the ad breaks on ITV are frustrating. They are too regular. They are too often. Too many ad breaks, bit frustrating. But you got to see some pretty good quality club football at the highest level without being ripped off for a monthly fee of how much? There you go. Jake Humphries, no, I can't stand Jake Humphries. He's a dead weight, absolute dead weight, absolute duffer, very average journalist, absolute duffer. And the fact that he was trying to find people who recognised him is quite sad. More than just very David Brent, it's just shows how few people really give a toss about BT Sport. And having phoned that call centre as an EE customer and getting through to a Geordie, I know how your call centre works because I've phoned it. But Chris Sutton, Hartson, and Larson turned up at Ewood Park that evening, then dominated Liverpool at Anfield. Wasn't bad for a pub team. I do remember, the Celtic team of the late '90s being uh, a pretty solid team. I think Scottish football in the late '90s was actually quite good to watch. Rangers and Celtic, and to a certain extent, some other clubs also throwing themselves in the mix and producing some pretty good players. It's not the same now. The fact you've got some of the best players of their generation. Chris Sutton, he screwed up his own England career. As a manager, he's crap. As a pundit, I'd rather gouge my ears out. John Hartson, bit of a thug as a player, but as a pundit, I actually really rate him. And also his battles with cancer are obviously very well known. I think he had testicular cancer and a brain tumour. His battles with cancer are well known. And very fiery player. Obviously, his career cut short for health reasons. And Henrik Larsson, I remember watching at World Cup '94 when he burst on the scene. He became a Celtic legend before we moved on to bigger clubs. But it is a shame that Scottish football has declined to the point where Kilmarnock have had to furlough staff because of this financial crisis. There isn't any money, and the plans for the Scottish Professional Football League to either void or restart the season are in the air. Rangers aren't happy with how the process has been conducted. They're calling for the head of the Scottish League and the Scottish FA to go. The whole mess in Scottish football is playing for see. And yeah, it would be nice for a BBC Sports channel or ITV or Channel 4, Channel 5 to have Champions League and Europa League rights again. Will it happen? It's a possibility. I think BT Sport is not long for this world. How long the BT hierarchy are willing to pump money into a failing business is anyone's guess. But we've been here before with Setanta. We've been here before with ITV Sports. ITV nearly went tits up themselves as a channel 20 years ago. They were in the same position as BT Sport are now. They were losing money hand over fist. They got the Premier League highlight rights. They got the FA Cup. They mishandled that. They screwed it up, and they nearly went bust. And that then led to Setanta taking over, buying out the remaining package of their games. They then went bust. ESPN stepped in, bought the remains of the Setanta games that no one wanted. They basically went bust in this country. BT Sport and Eurosport basically carved up ESPN. Eurosport got the good stuff. BT Sport got the crap stuff. Premier Sports come along and buy up the rest. And then figured out we can get TV rights for other sports, etc., etc. And there you go. I wouldn't say no one else cares about Scottish football outside of Glasgow. I think there is a care there. I just think the quality level and the finances aren't, and that is the problem. And I think the structures and the governing bodies are the problem with Scottish football. The lack of depth, of playing talent, the lack of quality, and the money issues as well. The money issues are a big part of the problem. The structures in place are a big part of the problem. And while, Celtic and Rangers have dominated the Scottish footballing scene for the majority of the time, there are other pretty big fan bases in Scotland. It is what it is. Oh, Setanta were terrible. Absolutely terrible. They used to give quarterly free views for a couple of days. Didn't take them up on the offer of unlocking Setanta at all. I don't know what actually happened if you were a Setanta customer when they went bust. What actually happened when you refunded the money? I don't know. But they were a shocking sports network. Really poor governance when it came to giving them the rights to so many sports and a lot of teams. the Setanta collapse affected Scottish football and still is feeling the effect today. So if BT go tits up, I think English football will be badly impacted as well, more so than when ITV Sport went bust. The impacts financially on football carry on for a long time. The Setanta collapse killed Gretna, nearly killed Dunfermline, basically destroyed Rangers, and a whole host of other Scottish clubs have had financial problems. I think Livingston, in the wake of Setanta's collapse 12 years ago. I don't think Scottish football is fully recovered, and I don't think it ever will. They became so reliant. They were desperate for cash at the time. Setanta came in and overbid. Uh, they overbid on the rights, and no one was watching it. So they put all their eggs in a basket. They threw their money into the project and overreached themselves and could never ever compete with what is now Sky Sports. Now BT are finding the same situation. And God forbid Premier Sports end up the same way. I like Premier Sports. While it's not as accessible as I would like it all free to wear. I think the subscription model for TV has had its day. You have to think with what's going on economically now and socially now, I don't think people are going to be willing to put up with overpriced stuff. And then all these people buying all these separate subscriptions like Netflix and Disney Plus and all that, weren't they just better off with standard pay TV license? Game passes and stuff, I don't know. I think even then, more people illegally streamed all these big boxing promotions and UFC. More people illegally stream than actually pay for the pay-per-views. I think that the market demanded all these subscription services. They got them, and now they're going, well, actually, it was cheaper than me just having basic cable. Why am I paying for all this stuff? So they always say the consumer's right. They're not. You're always told the consumer is always right, and more often than not, they're actually not. I can see us going to either subscription streaming or fully or free to air with advertising revenue fully. I can see the subscription model reaching a point where it's not working because that's heavily reliant on internet speeds, and we've seen, as lots of people are at home right now, internet speeds aren't what they should be, and they're not good enough. And we've seen the debate about TV licensing and whether we should pay it. But if you're willing to pay all these subscriptions for all these various other bits and pieces, it works out more than just a standard TV license. Just pay the TV license. If everyone paid their TV licenses, there'll be enough money for all this stuff to be on free-to-air TV anyway. The fact that people are paying on subscriptions for what I would say is lesser standard quality, I don't know. And can it be financially justified? Probably not. I survived my 30 years without ever having a Sky Sports subscription or BT Sports subscription. I've survived all this time without having to pay for a subscription service for sport. I think I can survive for the next 30 years. I can't economically justify having it. And I also have my personal views for, I found a few websites. I found the NRL, Watch NRL website, which is sanctioned by the NRL, and it works out cheaper than getting Sky Sports by a hell of a lot. I pay 120 quid for the whole season for a whole 12 months, which works out at £10 a month. Why would I want to pay stupid money when I'm only interested in a couple of sports? I'm losing love for cricket very, very quickly. The ECB are going to lose hundreds of millions of pounds on this 100 format that now can't take place. They put all their eggs in one basket. They had a backlash from fans. They were still pushing ahead. Now, global pandemic has killed that idea. Is what it is. I understand that Crick Free is a free streaming site, but at the same time, does it show the sports that I want to see? That's the debate that I have is okay. There's streaming sites out there, but at the same time, I can see us going to either completely free to air or completely online, and the subscription service, the model having to change, because I can't see the current economic mess that is that they can justify the prices they're demanding of people for these subscription services. Um, do I play on Football Manager? I used to. I don't anymore. I haven't played on Football Manager for years. I had a friend I used to play with. There's a group of us, and we all played online against each other. And unfortunately, I passed away 4 years ago now, and I haven't played since because we had our own like little personal battles about who could do what with what really bad team. I wouldn't say it's boring. I think it is addictive. It is very, very addictive. Once you get into it, it's had any interest in it. But it is addictive. I find strategy games like that can become dangerously, dangerously addictive. Which is one of the reasons why I don't play them anymore as much. Oh god, I started playing Footy Manager in 2000. My first team was Dover Athletic. I I I didn't play it solidly. I didn't play every single year Football Manager was released, but I played pretty solidly in the mid 2000s, and then I stopped. And then I started playing again in around 2012 till 2016, and then I stopped, and I haven't played since. And to be honest, I've lost my love for football at this time. I don't enjoy it as much as I used to, and with the current crisis and how football has reacted, both the clubs, the leagues, governing bodies, and the players. Um, my love for football has completely disappeared, for club football at least. International football, I think, is different. I can enjoy international football more because I can really get into that because you've got players from all around the world playing. But I've lost my love for club football and the wages they're on. I've really um, fallen out of love with a sport that, if you were to talk to me about 10 years ago, I was it was the number one thing. Now, not so much. I think the way the sport's governed, I think the quality is not as good as what it was because teams now are relying on one or two players like a Messi or Ronaldo to carry them when actually when they came coming through the ranks, they were playing superstar-studded teams with multiple players who were brilliant. I wouldn't say Jonathan Walters has embarrassed himself as such. I think the way he's come across hasn't helped, and the way he's worded things. But actually, what the players was saying through the PFA was they were seeking wage deferrals, and not rather a blanket 30% cut of wage deferral, but a club by club basis and a player by player basis to work out how it would, you know, affect the club as little as possible, the taxpayers as little as possible, and the players as little as possible. There are obviously those who say, well, they're overpaid anyway. We, the fans, are paying too much for tickets, merchandise, etc., etc. And yeah, I think football has lost touch with society and reality, and it's in a bubble which is a bit more detached than the average fan. I think it's losing touch with the average fan, and that is a problem. And the um, it's a difficult one. I think no one comes out a winner from this on a PR standpoint. I think the clubs are coming out looking bad. The players are coming out as looking not as bad as they could, but still pretty bad. The league's coming out looking as out of touch. The owners just not coming out great. Certain owners, and the way the media is portraying it, because there's no actual sport happening, they can put a lot of their attentions on the current standoff between the PFA and the clubs and the owners in the league. But The players haven't helped their case for some of their obscene wage demands over the last 20 years and their obscene wages. The agents haven't helped either because they've advised the players not to, um, you know, um, they're advising them, to stand firm. And Birmingham City led the way. And yet the FA and the EFL are still trying to punish Birmingham City for their financial problems, but they've led the way in players funneling money to the non-playing staff to make sure they're kept on full wages so they can survive and feed their families. And they're not on a lot of money at Birmingham City. I think football itself, it's losing its reputation quite quickly. How many of these fans will just forget about what's going on and go back to business as normal? Quite a few. There's also that percentage that football could risk losing as a fan base that turn their back on a sport they may have followed for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases and look elsewhere. It is risky itself for being less popular in the future. And if they take away free TV, free-to-air TV like the FA Cup, like international football, they've already tried to do with the UEFA Nations League, which they've already put on Sky, which I think is wrong because it's international football and it should be free to wear, but it's not a Category A competition. That's why it's not classed as Category A, which is protected. Rugby's going down the same route with the Six Nations. They did it before with England's games between 1997 and 2000. They very quickly realised all the fans switched off. They put it on Sky Sports and they very quickly backtracked on putting England games back on free-to-air TV. They very, very quickly backtracked and said, right, we'll only keep the autumn internationals of England's games now on subscription TV. We won't take away the Six Nations. They very quickly realised, we've lost 80% of our viewership. It's not good. So, football is risking its future by taking the fans for a ride. I think BT Sport should never have got the Champions League rights solely. That should have been split free-to-air subscription, which have been going well for 25 years with no problems, and then they took that away from us, which I thought was the wrong move. I think what we're seeing now is a battle between all the money, all the power brokers, and the fans. They're the ones who are going to lose out either way. When we get back to normality, which will take some time, anywhere between 3 and 18 months to get back to normality, football's going to feel the effects for quite some time. The one positive I think we can take out of this is this coming Euros next summer now, which is going to be kicking off in a couple of months, which is now kicking off in a year and a couple of months, I think is going to be the best Euros we will ever see, the best football tournament we could ever see, ever. We could see the best football of all time, because I think they're gonna have to condense next season. We may not have Champions League and Europa League or other domestic cup competitions for that matter taking place, which is a shame because I think the love and the passion has been taken away from those cup competitions by the various domestic authorities and UEFA by getting rid of the Cup Winners' Cup. But we may actually have players fresh, injury-free, rested, and the best players for each country available to play. I think players are if we see a condensed season next season or a reduced season, I think if that is the case, the players are going to will have played less games. We're going to have more players available for selection. I think players will be fresher. There will still be players who will get injured. Absolutely, players get injured all the time in training and in games, and as we've seen with car accidents in the past with players as well. We've had car accidents and done silly things outside of training, some freak injuries. But players do get ill, do get injuries. But what I will think is there'll be less players on the injured list. Players will be fresher. Players will be hungry to play because this is their job. They've been basically not played properly. They played less games. They've not showcased what they're about. They haven't played as much, put as much mileage on the bodies. I think we could have the best Euros we've ever seen. Whether then later on with the World Cup, would that have to be rearranged? They're already going to have to reconfigure the fixture list for the following season because of the World Cup. Will that then impact the quality of the World Cup? Will we see a Confederations Cup take place? If they have moved the Euros, that will impact the Confederations Cup, which is the test run of the World Cup. That's going to be interesting to see how that's impacted and how they're going to reorganise the footballing calendar to accommodate a winter World Cup, basically. So the footballing sporting calendar is going to change. The Olympics possibly will change as well going forward. When they, what year they host it, whether the Olympic movement has reached its zenith, and therefore, going forward with this crisis and the financial, cost that's hit the global economy, whether going forward it's financially viable to have an Olympic Games. The Euros and UEFA have said this cross tournament, cross-continental tournament, it will be the one of a kind. It will never be repeated. After this, it will go back to being hosted by a host nation or co-hosts. So there's lots of unknowns to happen, but I think the face of sport is going to change. And especially with football seems so out of touch with the fan base and the communities that the sport is played in. Though, I do think we're going to see a permanent change going forward. We are going to see player wages definitely not grow as fast as they have, or maybe shrink. We're going to see. I mean, if Harry Kane goes for 200 million to Man United, I think that's going against the trend of everything, because I cannot see how that can be justified. I don't see how fans will be happy with paying, that much money being used on a transfer, and then Man United have to justify paying 200 million, and then Tottenham have to justify why they demanded so much money. And with what's going on with the negativity that Tottenham have faced with furloughing staff, and Levy taking these big bonuses when the club itself has won no silverware. They're trying to pay off this stadium that was over budget, delayed, and badly thought through with the planning application. And they're paying a lot of players a lot of money, and they're underperforming. And financially, the fans are paying more. The food and drink prices at the stadium are extortionate. And is it justifiable? Is it justifiable long term that football can milk the fan base? We've already seen creaks and cracks appearing with relationship between the sport and the fans, and there's only so long that relationship can reach this impasse where fans are getting more and more frustrated with the price of the sport that they want to watch. And I do think that there's too many people in the UK who think football is the only sport in the world worth watching. There's a lot of good sport in the UK and around the world. There's a lot of good sport available, and unfortunately, for good or well, I say unfortunately. I think football has been badly governed and long overdue for a system that works to control finances. Financial fair play doesn't work. UEFA have admitted as much. There needs to be some kind of spend or salary cap or transfer cap. UEFA have basically admitted as much, that the system as it currently stands doesn't work. And I can't see that transfer record of Neymar's getting broken for the next decade or so. I cannot see that being broken. We've seen the transfer record, I think, being broken, 15 times or something in 10 years. And then Neymar's comes along. It's been, I think, 3 years now since Neymar's transfer from Barcelona PSG this summer, June, July. If Harry Kane goes for close to 200 million plus, that could push the Neymar transfer. He could become the first or second most expensive player in the world. I can't see it happening. I can't see fans across the board, not just Tottenham or Man United fans, being happy with the amount of money spent, considering what's going on with the situation globally and nationally right now. I can't see that being justifiable or acceptable, considering the global situation. I just cannot see that as being acceptable. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. We have to, wait and see what happens with what's going on a social side of things, and with contingency plans being put in place by various sports leagues, sports events. And on the football side of things, this live stream has been dominated by football, but there's other sports as well that are looking at restarting or completing seasons or delaying the start of seasons and when they're going to start up and how are they going to be affected. Various off-season business that is also needing to be done, and the playing, the non-playing staff being looked after. Football in the UK has dominated the debate. Other sports are suffering as well. I mean, like Johnny May's going back to Gloucester. He's leaving Leicester and going back to Gloucester once the season is concluded. Whenever it's concluded, he's gone back to his former club. That's barely getting spoken about because the standoff between the players and the clubs and the league and the FA and the Scottish FA as well is dominating the sports headlines. And with, as I say, no sport taking place, the sports media is focusing all their attentions on a very what would normally not, I don't think, make news. I don't think this would normally be the headline news. If it doesn't matter if the sport had been closed down or not. I don't think PFA standoff with the Premier League and the players standing off with the clubs would actually be the main sports story if football was continuing. Even though these talks would possibly be in the background, I don't think that would be the main sports story somehow. I think they'd be more interested in the results and the transfer rumours. I think if the league had continued behind closed doors, yes, the league would have lost less money or be potentially losing less money. But I do think that, yeah, the debate about player wage deferrals and wage cuts would still be there. But I think we would more likely come to a conclusion quicker and swifter. With nothing taking place, the Premier League, the FA, the EFL, UEFA, and all the various concerned bodies are more interested in getting the season restarted and completed. Players are actually, I think, on the moral high ground. Admittedly, they could just defer their money anyway. They were advised, not told. They were just advised to not take pay cuts and deferrals without a deal in place. But individual clubs and playing groups have come together and thrashed out deals. It's the way it's been reported. And yeah, I think football has dug itself a PR hole that it may never get out of. And I think it does risk the more, when I say hardcore, moderate fan, I think, yeah, the family grouping, so the fans who are family units who are, as a family, watch the sport together, I think the casual fans are going to get turned off. The family group kind of fan structure, when you look at the demographic, I think female fans are going to be turned off more than male fans from football. I think those that watch it as a family unit rather than just one member of the family, but that kind of demographic where it's mum, dad, kids, we could lose where they're trying to attract families to games and young people to games. They could be switched off because kids obviously are very intuitive. That's going to hurt football. I think the fan base could shrink by, I think 20 or 30%. You take women out of it, and you take the family groupings. You go as a group, like father with his kids, or parents taking the kids out of a game, or they sit around the TV together and let's say they watch their team play. You could lose them. So you're going to lose the casual fan as well. He may tune into the occasional game if he's down the pub or it's international football or FA Cup or something like that, which is readily accessible. They're going to tune off. And then you're just stuck with the hardcore fans who, through and through, regardless of how the team are doing, will still shout and scream at the TV. So you're going to lose, I would say, about a third of your fan base of football could be switched off. That would be catastrophic. And we're already seeing crowd numbers and empty seats at games empty seats going up, and crowd numbers going down at events like games like the FA Cup. Fans are already angry at the scheduling of certain games in the FA Cup midweek. Fans are angry at the kickoff times, ticket prices, merchandise prices, poor governance. It's building up and building up, and if we do have a lengthy breakdown of talks between the PFA and the players and the clubs and the FA and the league and all that, I think, yeah, the longer this goes on, the more likely we are to have a player strike, the more likely we are to have a lengthy impasse where fans just have enough. They've had enough, and they're going to focus on other sports, which are cheaper to watch, more interactive with the fan base and getting fans involved and community involved and activities for the young kids and getting family season ticket passes and that's where ice hockey is quite good, ironically, and rugby league and rugby union. Rugby league definitely use a fan boost. Rugby union could definitely use a money boost as well. And they cost less to go and watch. They seem to be more accessible than football in the sense of they're cheaper. Replica jerseys cheaper, ticket prices cheaper. You're going to see football fans drift away and go to other sports. And if they don't like rugby league or rugby union, okay, there's other sports out there. There's ice hockey, there's motorsport, there's cricket, there's golf, and then you have to look at how these sports and why these sports are struggling. Could they then go, okay, football's making a mess out of this. We could pick up fans here. Their PR departments will go, right, we could grow the sports here because they're tuning out of football. They want to come and be entertained by something. We could pick up fans here. The issue is with golf and tennis. They're on the tour. They go around the world. Golf is not for everyone. Tennis is not for everyone. Ice hockey, I think, is more of a niche appeal. It is a team sport, but a lot of people don't know the rules of it. They haven't watched it before. It's a great opportunity for all the ice hockey leagues in the UK to reach out to fans and go, come on down, we'll give you half price tickets. If you're a family group, your kids going for free. I think football is risking its fan base, and the other sports are licking their lips, going, okay, we can promote ourselves in a positive way here, pick up the fans. Rugby union, rugby league, they've got to start working together for a common goal, where they share facilities and work together rather than against each other like they have been over the years. They've done their best to sabotage each other, which I think has damaged both codes and made it more difficult for both codes to grow. I think they need to start working together. And if they look at football and how bad it's got, they could definitely go, right, we need to look at our current TV packages. We could look at how much we're paying players, length of contract, a whole host of things, getting fans involved, making the sport more accessible, making the players more accessible, looking at our facilities. This could be a learning curve for those sports. Cricket, they're losing fans. They come up with the 100 idea. Wrong idea. What fans want? More accessible. More free-to-air coverage on TV. It doesn't matter if it's domestic, T20 or one days. Fans want that. They want domestic test matches back on domestic free-to-air TV. That's what they're crying out for. They get given the 100. They don't want that. Cricket hasn't listened to its fan base. It's not giving them what they want. It's crying out to get those fans back. The casual fans switched off. The viewership numbers for the Cricket World Cup and the final and the Ashes are still down, even though they had the Cricket World Cup final on free-to-air TV. They're 10 million less on peak than the last day at the Oval when England won in 2005. They're 10 million fans down on where they were 15 years prior. Again, you see that the casual fans switched off. Some hardcore fans have fallen out of love with the sport. They've lost 10 million viewers, which equates to, basically over 30%. I think it was 35, 40% of the viewership 15 years previously is gone, and that's what football risks. And if that happens, the knock-on effects will be catastrophic. Those that still want to watch will have to pay more on subscription. Those that still go to game will pay more for their tickets. Those that go and want to buy the merchandise will pay more for their shirts, their scarves, their beanies, their hats, gloves, anything with the logo on. They're going to pay more. Prices will go up. Fans will stay away. Smaller clubs will struggle. So, football does risk a good 30, 40% drop-off in fans, top end. And if that happens, then, football is risking its future. And I use examples of other sports where there has been labour unrest. You look at the North American sports, for example. Major League Baseball has had constant labour unrest in its history. Admittedly, not for a long time, but it hasn't fully recovered from all the scandals. I think everyone one day wants to see the Lions tours back on free-to-air TV. I know we had the Rugby League Lions tour on free-to-air TV, but that was just a shambolic disaster, so no one really wanted to watch it anyway. because they lost every single game. But yeah, it would be nice to see the Lions play free to air. Will it happen? No. No. Sky has got their teeth in that one. And I can't see them relenting anytime soon. There's talk of taking Six Nations off free-to-air TV, which has not gone down well at all with fans. CVC, that's that investment partnership group. Yeah, there is talk of Six Nations going off free-to-air TV. If that happens, I think rugby will kill itself in Europe. There's a chance for Ireland, England, Wales, France to challenge the Southern Hemisphere dominance in the next 5-10 years. There is a massive opportunity where the French have worked out a method to win. Admittedly, they lost their last game against Scotland because they did implode. But before then, they weren't playing great, but they were winning games. And when they clicked ball in hand, they just were unstoppable. They just played in a way that couldn't defend against them. And England, World Cup finalists, hardly changed the team, hardly changed the lineup in that World Cup final. Yes, they were soundly beaten by South Africa, but they went a lot further in the tournament than France did. France destroyed them. There is an opportunity with looking at the Six Nations and the platform with all these players coming through, that if you take that opportunity away from the fans to see, you risk the future of the sport. As football is now finding out, and rugby to a certain extent, both codes, their futures are not secure. You have to ask the question, where has all the money gone? Because they've signed all these big TV deals, and clearly they're not. It's not going as well as rugby league is in financial mess. Rugby union, the Saracens scandal, and again, globally, rugby union, the finances are a mess. Football, apart from a couple of clubs that have a good corporate sponsorship arrangements, where even as we found out, games aren't being played, they've got good sponsorship deals. So Man United are in a healthy situation, but another big club like Tottenham, I think like saying they're capped at 200 million quid to make up the losses they're facing right now. So questions have to be asked where the money has gone, and the justification of paying these players these obscene wages. And this is where the players, with their argument of not wanting to take pay cuts but take wage deferrals, they haven't got much sympathy from the viewing public or the public as a whole, because A, it's taken so long to start the discussions in the first place, and B, they've been very well paid for a long time, and they've never really, as a group, discussed, even though they have done great charitable things over the years, individually or in small groups, they haven't really justified their wages until now. And now they're trying to justify their wages when actually they're seen as out of touch. It's like, I use Danny Rose as the example because last year he said, at this time last year, he wanted to get 100 grand a week. 50 grand was not enough to live on. Oh, don't tell me Peter Bonetti's gone as well. We've already got Sterling Moss and Kobe Cave. Don't tell me Bonetti's gone. Don't tell me the Panther's gone. Oh, Christ, cat. I'm going to have to now look at doing a Peter Bonetti video now. Oh, don't tell me Peter Bonetti's gone. Oh, I'm just depressed now. Oh, don't. If Bonetti's gone, I'm just going to just not be happy at all. I know Jimmy Greaves has been seriously ill. Dalglish has been in hospital as well. I think Leeds, Norman Hunt has been in hospital. So there's been a lot of players, ex-players, who've not been well. But if Bonetti's gone, I'm just gonna have a fit. I will. At this time, there's so much negative news. It'd be nice to have like some positive news. And if Bonetti's gone, then that's going to be not pleasant, because he was one of the few goalkeepers who challenged Gordon Banks until Peter Shilton came along for the #1 jersey for England, and he had that disastrous quarter final against Germany in 1970, which was ironically his last ever appearance for England. He never played for England ever again after that, which is a shame because he was a very, very talented goalkeeper, very, very talented. There's a reason why he was called the Panther. He had great reflexes, and I'm just going to have to double check to double check that, because that's just a real crap sporting news day. Then if you've lost Cody Cave to a brain hemorrhage yesterday, ice hockey player, who not everyone will know, but we've lost Sterling Moss this morning, and now we've lost Peter Bonetti this afternoon. That's not really what you want to hear, really, over Easter. You want to hear it's a time of renewal and positivity, and it's just, yeah, no, it's confirmed. Last 10 minutes, Peter Bonetti has passed away. He played 729 times for Chelsea. He also played for St. Louis, Dundee United, and Woking. 3 decades. Only Ron Harris has made more appearances for Chelsea than Bonetti. Only Peter Cech has had more clean sheets than Bonetti. He obviously played that role in the FA Cup winning side of 1970 against Leeds. He won the League Cup 65, Cup Winners' Cup 71. The Cat, or the Panther, Ron Tyndall called him the Cat, but he was also nicknamed the Panther as well. He was the cat that broke the mould, defied the odds, drew the grasps, earned the cheers, and got the cream. All in front of the door in Stamford Bridge. All at Chelsea was. He was known as one of the most flexible and athletic goalkeepers ever. And yeah, but I'm going to have to call it a day now. I've been going, 2 hours? I'm going to have to do a video on Peter Bonetti now. That means setting up the board and looking at his stats, because he was an amazing goalkeeper. It's a shame that he's gone as well. What a crap day it is. That is an absolute crap day. We lost Sterling Moss in the morning, Bonetti in the afternoon, and 25-year-old NHL player the night before. That's just an absolute shit show of bad timing. Because Easter is meant to be a time of positivity, and at the moment it's quite the opposite. And I do think when football and other sports resume as well, there's going to be a lot of moment silences and moments of applause, or however you want to, how they do it these days. I know in Italy they started doing the clapping thing. They do it at funerals, ironically. And now, yeah, the Goodies. Yeah, we lost Rookie Taylor from the Goodies. Comic genius. Not the most famous comedian, but still quite a famous, still cult hero when it comes to certain comedy. But on a sporting sense, it's been a crappy 24 hours. Real crap 24 hours. And today has been a real crap 5-6 hours. Sterling Moss to Pete Bonetti, I think it was 5 hours apart between both announcements. So that's pretty crap. So yeah, there we go. I'm gonna have to do a video on the life and career of Peter Bonetti, and he's a very interesting character because he had the nickname the Cat, he nicknamed the Panther, and very good shot stopper, very flexible, very athletic, hence the nickname. And he did challenge Gordon Banks for being England's #1. He did play at 2 World. Well, he did go to 2 World Cups. He didn't play at 66. He was backup goalkeeper, but he did play in 1970, and that was his final appearance for England. He played 7 times. But his clean sheet record for Chelsea, and the fact he won a few bits of silver with Chelsea as well, I think, League Cup, Cup Winners' Cup, and FA Cup, he was instrumental in all 3 of those titles because of his goalkeeping and keeping the opposition at bay with some exceptional goalkeeping. At a time when the balls were heavy and the pitches weren't great, his athleticism and his quick reflexes at a time when those balls were heavy and pitches were heavy as well. I think he would be one that, if he was playing today, he would have definitely had more appearances for England, and possibly would have had more appearances at club level as well. But there we go. I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll have to do a Peter Bonetti career video shortly. I'm going to have to obviously do some research, but I'll leave that for a little bit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll have obviously some more videos for you soon. Hopefully of more positive nature in the coming days. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.